Douchebag with a gun here. Now I'm going to admit, y'all keep surprising me. I was beginning to think that I had y'all pinned and that my audience only wants to see videos of overpriced expensive shit. Turns out that there are a lot of Glock fans watching my channel. So that's a real good thing, since I can milk out a few more videos of Glock content. And while this particular one here has made a guest appearance on my Glock 17 video, it has definitely earned itself some time in the spotlight today. So now, if y'all haven't watched my episode 14, it might be a good time to do that. In that video, I explain a bit of my fondness for the 45 ACP cartridge. Not that I think it needs much explaining. It is, after all, a piece of American history. Now, the fad is currently 9mm lipstick guns that you can hide in your panties during your hot yoga class. Or maybe y'all are one of them bandwagon jumpers who favor that flavor of the week 10mm craze that gets all the guys on YouTube hot and bothered because they get shit for free.
One of my all-time favorite calibers is the 10mm, which I have here. And what a glorious caliber this is. In its prime, in its heyday, this thing was loaded so hot, it touched upon 41 Magnum power, and people really loved this caliber.
Seems that 45 ACP has become a bit of a dinosaur. Kind of like 7.62 NATO, if I'm being honest. But I am also a dinosaur, and I still like my 45 ACP. But I'm also a douchebag, and I like my tactical shit. Now, years ago, I had spent several months fawning over the FNX 45 Tactical. More than likely, some Navy SEAL had written a book where they mentioned that they used that gun. And since I want to be a keyboard warrior, I figured I have to have one of those. But back then I couldn't bring myself to drop $1,200 on a heavy as shit handgun. So I went with the cheaper option and spent a ton more money making it into an FNX 45 wannabe. And that's what y'all see here today. Now this here started its life as a Glock 21. And it has obviously been heavily modified from the stock form. And a lot of the parts that I opted for are similar, if not identical, to the parts that I put into my Glock 17. Well, y'all should know me by now, and once I fall in love with something, I kind of stick with it. So, I've decided that while it may make no sense whatsoever, I'm going to go over this pistol from ass to mouth, because that's how I roll. Now the frame is a Gen 3 SF frame. Once again, the grip could definitely benefit from some additional texture. I prefer the Gen 4 and Gen 5 grip texture a lot more. I had a 40 caliber Glock 23 in the rough textured frame years ago, and that thing just chewed the shit out of my hand. So maybe I just have soft girly hands, but I prefer a grip texture that is somewhere in between shards of broken glass and a greased up deaf guy.
Oh, this is my favorite event. Catch the greased up deaf guy.
Go!
You're never gonna catch me. You're wasting your time. Forget about it. Go do something else. See you next year.
I should probably clarify that I bought the Gen 3 SF because that is what was at the shop when I decided to randomly buy the gun. In hindsight, buying a Gen 4 would have been a lot smarter. And I definitely picked this up before Gen 5 was even a thing. Now moving forward, the trigger is a Zev Technologies Pro Kit, which included the trigger bar, trigger spring, and the housing for the ejector, as well as the striker detent and spring and a new striker spring. Now this was a little cheaper than the full-blown Fulcrum trigger kit that they offer and that I've put into some of the other pistols. That would include a different skeletonized striker and some other jazz that I just didn't see the need to put into this gun. The trigger pull itself is still pretty good. Again, it's not as sexy or as sweet as a tuned up Beretta or anything like that. But for a striker fire pistol, it has still pretty much a spongy pull, but it is light. And the reset, very sharp, very tactile. Oh, and the trigger is ambidextrous, just in case y'all were wondering. On this side, we have a Vickers extended slide lock. There's really no reason for putting one of these things in there, except that I just like changing shit, so I did. And on the nose, we have a Streamlight TLR1 HL. It's the high lumen. And I really like Streamlight for their pistol lights. They're kind of the equivalent of my Surefire fetish on long guns. And this thing is bright as hell, which it better be for the high lumen. And it does have that stupid strobe feature, which I don't really like, but it's there. Now we can move up to the slide, which is definitely the most distinctive feature of this guy. Unlike with my G17, this is actually the factory slide that I sent to Zev to have it milled. This is, again, several years back, and back then, Zev used to do custom milling. I don't see it on their website as something that they even offer anymore. But this guy was a design that they had offered for some of their smaller frame Glocks, but they did not offer a prefabricated version of this slide for the large frame pistols, like the 21. And I really wanted it. So I sent them my original slide and they chopped it up for me. Now back then they were also known as Zev Custom, and so that's what they would have also milled into my gun. They've since changed their name to Zev Technologies, so if you go to their website, that's why it's different. Now, I went with this chop because, well, it's kind of badass, frankly. And again, if you watch my Glock 17 video, you know I don't like relief cuts into the slide because I drop my shit all over the place and these things get pretty filthy. And I ain't that delicate with my pistols, so I don't like places for dirt and shit to ingress. And anybody who knows Glocks knows that you can actually see through the goddamn gun, through the frame here. So, you know, I don't need any more nooks and crannies for shit to be diving in there. I also liked that these were very aggressive front slide serrations. Technically, they aren't quite as sharp as the ones on the Glock 17 that I have, but these are still really, really nice and very, very functional. And I still have full use, obviously, of the rear serrations as well. Now, they had a cool name for this at the time that I did it. I think they called it the Cenobite, which is a reference to the movie Hellraiser. But don't quote me on that, and I might just be making shit up. I tend to do that when I don't really know the answer. And you can see that the serrations, they wrap all the way up and around over the top. They did a really nice job there. And really the only reference that you have to the original slide is they just left a touch of the G right here. If you can barely see it. Touch of the G from where the original engraving of the Glock logo was. But other than that, you'd never even know. The finish is actually, I believe it was just a clear coat, but again, don't quote me on that. It's not a Cerakote, but it might be a clear coat anodized. So, but it's got almost that cool pewter look to it, which is really, really slick. I'm not sure how it's going to show up on YouTube, but it's got a really cool distinctive color to it. So I just wanted something that wasn't black and wasn't brown in my collection. They did a really, really nice job. The turnaround on it was only about 4 or 5 weeks, something like that at the time. So everything about it was really reasonable. Again, I don't even know that they offer the service anymore, so I don't think it really makes much of a difference. But it wasn't cheap. I also have to throw that in there. This was about 450 bucks. It was cost almost as much, if I recall, as it would have to buy one of their prefab slides. It was not cheap at all. They obviously milled it in for the RMR, and I do have a Trijicon RMR on here with the 2MOA dot. I also threw on a set of the Trijicon suppressor high night sights. And so yeah, that completes the package on the top. For the barrel, I wanted a threaded barrel, and so I opted for a silencer co barrel. So this is pretty much the same barrel that I have in my Glock 17 that I showed y'all already. And it is threaded for 0.578 by 28, and it's a 416R stainless steel barrel with a really dark nitride finish, nice nitride finish. And I've got quite a few rounds through it, and you can see that it's wearing pretty normal. They had already done a polish of some of the high contact surfaces, so well, really just right there. And yeah, it came with a thread protector, so that was a bonus, obviously. But a really nice barrel overall. Now, in my G17 video, I made fun of Lenny McGill and his titanium guide rods, and I'm going to talk about that for a bit. Here I have a Glockmeister titanium guide rod and recoil spring. Now, for this particular gun, when I put a silencer on it with the stock recoil assembly, it does not cycle. It will not go back into battery. So I needed a heavier recoil spring to use with this gun when it is suppressed. And trying to find a heavier recoil spring that isn't on some kind of stainless steel or titanium guide rod is, well, really effing hard, and I didn't feel like doing that much digging, so I just figured I'd bite the bullet and buy the fancy heavy metal recoil assembly, and that makes it cycle just fine. Problem is, you have to change this back to the stock one when you take the silencer off, because it will not cycle with the heavier spring in there without a silencer. So it's kind of a pain in the ass. And frankly, it's first world problems, but it's still kind of a pain in the ass. So there you have it. And this was my Gucci Glock knockoff of an FNX 45. And while it has a lower mag capacity and a little bit more bling than the FN, it still serves the same purpose in my collection. If I want to pop off some 45 with a silencer, this is my go-to for that. Accuracy's been great. The reliability is generally fine, with the exception of having to change the recoil spring and make sure you remember which recoil spring is actually in the gun before you go shooting. You know, what would I use it for? Well, shooting shit, of course. Shooting squirrels, shooting coons, shooting coyotes, shooting hippies.
How do you hide money from a hippie? You hear that, hippie? Everyone do what you? You didn't get that question right. You're gonna have to put your mouth on this. Oh yeah. There ain't nothing like hippie.
Now, once again, when you add up the cost of the stock Glock on top of all these upgrades, this is another ridiculously stupid project. The slide work, like I said, probably in the neighborhood of 450 bucks, 500 to 550 for the Glock itself, 125 for the barrel, 150 for the sights, another 250 for the trigger, yada, yada, yada. You get the point. I could have bought an FNX 45 and it would have cost me probably less. But I will say, mags for the Glock are affordable and plentiful and stupid reliable. Factory mags, or Glock mags, are pretty much famous for their high quality and reliability. Anyway, that's pretty much all I got for today's video. Thank y'all for watching. Be sure to check out my brother, Dooshbag's brother Dick, over on his channel, using the link in the video description down yonder. And remember,
I don't know who you are out there, but I have a gun.